We all know the story. It is one of the first myths we are told as children. King Midas asks the gods for a gift. He wants everything he touches to turn to gold. At first, it is a miracle. He touches a stone, it becomes a fortune. He touches a twig, it becomes a treasure. But then the horror sets in. He sits down to eat, and the bread turns to hard, cold metal in his mouth. He reaches out to comfort his weeping daughter, and she freezes instantly into a golden statue. We are taught that this is a story about greed, but it is actually a story about attachment. The Midas touch is the perfect metaphor for what happens when you want something too much. When you pursue a desire with desperate, starving energy, you are Midas. You are grasping at reality with such intensity that you calcify it. You freeze the flow. You turn a living, breathing possibility into a dead, heavy object. Think about the things you have chased the hardest: the specific person, the specific job, the specific outcome. Did they come to you? Or did they seem to wither and die the tighter you squeezed? This is the shadow of Midas. It is the metaphysical law that says, if you cannot hold a desire loosely, you will destroy it. Today, we are going to look at the danger of over-wanting. We are going to learn why the only way to truly have the gold is to be willing to walk away from it. Chapter 1. The Scent of Starvation. Let us step away from the shimmering image of gold for a moment and look closely at the man standing in the center of the room. Before the golden touch, there was the wish. And before the wish, there was a profound and aching hunger. This brings us to a subtle but devastating mechanic of human psychology and material cause and effect. We call this segment the scent of starvation. There is a peculiar paradox in the pursuit of any desire. Whether you are chasing a romantic partner, a high-stakes business deal, or social recognition, the intensity of your need often dictates the likelihood of your failure. This is not magic. It is not some mystical force balancing the scales. It is a grounded, observable reality of social dynamics and behavioral psychology. Desperation has a scent. It may not register in the olfactory nerves, but it registers in the primitive brain of every person you meet. When you want something too much, you stop behaving like a person who offers value and start behaving like a person who seeks to extract it. You become a hunter who is starving. And in the wild, when a predator is starving, it is dangerous, unpredictable, and clumsy. Consider the dynamic of a negotiation. Imagine sitting across the table from a salesman who absolutely needs this sale to pay his rent tomorrow. His movements are too sharp. His smile is too wide and lingers for a second too long. He agrees too quickly. Every sentence he speaks is laden with a heavy, sticky pressure. You feel it. You instinctively recoil. You clutch your wallet tighter. His need creates a vacuum that sucks the air out of the room, and your only biological imperative is to escape that vacuum before it consumes you. Now contrast this with a person who has options, a person who wants the deal but does not need it to survive. They lean back. They listen more than they speak. They are willing to walk away. Paradoxically, this lack of need makes them magnetic. They signal stability. They signal that they are a resource, not a drain. We are evolutionarily wired to associate with those who have an abundance of resources and to avoid those who are sinking. When you project the energy of Midas before the gold, the energy of a man starving for validation or security, you are signaling that you are a sinking ship. No one boards a sinking ship voluntarily. This is the tragedy of the golden cage. The more you obsess over the outcome, the more you tighten your grip. Think of holding a handful of dry sand. If you hold your palm flat and open, the sand remains. It sits there, stable and abundant. But the moment you become terrified of losing it, the moment you clench your fist to secure it, the sand rushes out between your fingers. The harder you squeeze,
the less you have. This creates a self-fulfilling cycle of failure. The desperate actor creates anxiety within themselves. This anxiety destroys cognitive fluidity. You cannot think clearly when you are in a state of panic. You miss social cues. You force conversations. You overplay your hand. In sports, this is called choking. The physical desire to win overrides the muscle memory required to execute the movement. The muscles tense up, the flow disrupts, and the ball goes wide. King Midas wanted the gold because he felt an internal void. He believed the external object would silence the internal screaming. But because his desire was born of starvation, he did not know when to stop. He did not know how to interact with the world without possessing it. When you approach your goals with this same starving energy, you crush the life out of them. You suffocate the relationship. You kill the negotiation. You turn the dynamic into cold, dead metal. The antidote to this poison is a difficult internal shift. It requires you to find a sense of fullness before you sit at the table. You must cultivate the psychology of the person who has already won. This is not about pretending. It is about assessing your reality and realizing that you will be okay regardless of the outcome. When you truly accept that you do not need the victory to sustain your worth, you suddenly gain the dexterity to achieve it. You must walk into the room willing to leave empty-handed. Only then are you safe enough to be trusted with the prize. You must scrub the scent of starvation from your skin. If you enjoy these deep dives into the psychology of power and consequence, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. It helps this library of ideas grow. Let us continue. Chapter 2. The closed fist cannot receive. Imagine you are standing at the edge of the ocean with a handful of dry sand. This is the substance of your desire. It represents the relationship you are trying to save, or the promotion you are desperate to secure, or the recognition you crave. You want to keep every single grain because you believe you need it to survive. So you squeeze. You tighten your grip to ensure nothing escapes. But observe what happens physically. As your fingers contract and your knuckles turn white, the pressure forces the sand out through the gaps between your fingers. The harder you squeeze, the faster it spills. The tension you apply to secure your prize becomes the very force that expels it. By the time you open your hand to check your inventory, you find that your palm is empty. You crushed the thing you meant to protect. This illustrates the central paradox of the Midas shadow. We call this the law of reversed effort. In the realm of psychology and performance, there is a threshold where care becomes anxiety and intention becomes desperation. When you cross that line, your efforts begin to produce the opposite of your desired result. Consider the mechanics of the human body. To throw a ball with precision or to play a piano concerto, the muscles must be relaxed. There must be a fluidity to the movement. If a pianist is terrified of hitting a wrong note, their body stiffens. Their fingers become rigid claws. The music stops flowing and becomes mechanical and jarring. The fear of failure guarantees the failure. This applies directly to how we pursue our goals in the material world. When you approach a negotiation or a romantic partner with the energy of a closed fist, you project a signal of scarcity. You are telling the world that you are starving. You are broadcasting that you do not believe you will be okay without this specific outcome. Humans are highly perceptive social animals. We can smell desperation on another person, just as we can smell smoke in a crowded room. When someone stands before you with a closed fist, metaphorically speaking, they feel heavy. Their conversation feels like a demand. Their compliments feel like transactions. You instinctively want to back away from them because their neediness feels like a vacuum that will drain your resources. This is why the closed fist cannot receive. It is not because of some mystical law of attraction that punishes you for wanting things. It is a simple matter of structural availability. A hand that is clenched shut creates a barrier against the outside world. Nothing new can enter. You cannot shake hands with a closed fist. You cannot catch a ball with a closed fist. You can only hold on to what is already decaying inside your grip. King Midas found himself in this exact predicament. His desire for gold was born from a fear of insignificance and a need for absolute security. He wanted to secure his reality so tightly that nothing could ever hurt him. But by turning everything to gold, he froze his world in place. He stopped the flow of life. He could not eat because bread turned to metal. He could not drink because wine turned to solid bullion. His daughter, whom he loved, ran to embrace him and became a golden statue. His embrace was a closed fist. He tried to capture the moment, and in doing so, he killed it. We see this tragedy play out in modern lives every day. The person who is terrified of being alone grips their partner so tightly with jealousy and control that the partner leaves to find air to breathe. The entrepreneur who is desperate for money obsesses over every penny and refuses to take the calculated risks required to grow, causing the business to stagnate. The solution creates a frightening sensation for the anxious mind. You must open the hand. You must relax the tension in the forearm and let the fingers uncurl. This feels like surrender, but it is actually strategic positioning. When you open your hand, you increase the surface area of your palm.
You allow the sand to sit there without pressure. Without the force of the squeeze, the grains settle and remain. More importantly, an open hand is ready to interact with reality as it changes. It can adjust. It can grasp when necessary and release when necessary. To release the Midas shadow, you must realize that your desperation is not a fuel source. It is a brake. You have convinced yourself that if you stop worrying and clutching, everything will fall apart. The evidence suggests otherwise. It is your clutching that is shattering the object of your desire. The psychological shift requires you to find a sense of stability that is independent of the external object. You must know you will be okay, whether the sand stays or leaves. Once that fear is removed, your muscles relax. Your voice drops to a natural pitch. Your micro-expressions soften. You become a person who is pleasant to be around and easy to work with. By stopping the frantic squeeze, you allow natural causality to take over. You allow your skills to function without the interference of panic. You stop blocking the very doorway you are trying to walk through. The gold is heavy and cold, but the open hand is warm and alive. It is only when you are willing to lose the prize that you finally develop the steady hands required to hold it. Chapter 3. The pedestal is a prison. Let us examine the architecture of desperation. It builds a very specific structure in the mind. We often mistake this structure for honor or respect or intense dedication. We call it the pedestal. When you want something with a burning intensity, there is a natural human impulse to elevate it. You lift the object of your desire high above the gritty reality of your daily life. You polish it until it gleams without a single scratch. You place it on a column of white marble
and you stand at the bottom, looking up. This feels like devotion. It feels like you are proving how much this goal matters to you. But in the cold mechanics of psychology, you have just constructed a prison. The segment title is "The Pedestal is a Prison," and it traps two distinct captives. The first captive is the object of your desire itself. By elevating it, you have removed it from the realm of the real and placed it into the realm of the ideal. Real things are messy and complex and attainable. Ideal things are perfect and distant and terrifying.
When you place a career ambition, or a potential partner, or a financial milestone on a pedestal, you strip it of its humanity and its nuance. You turn it into a statue. A statue cannot interact with you. A statue is cold and heavy and unforgiving. King Midas turned his daughter into gold and found that he could no longer embrace her. When you turn your goal into gold, you find that you can no longer engage with it naturally. You have frozen the very thing you wanted to hold. The second captive in this scenario is you. The moment you place something above you, you automatically place yourself beneath it. This is not a metaphysical statement. It is a spatial and psychological fact. To look up at the pedestal, you must be on your knees. You adopt the posture of the inferior. You convince your subconscious mind that the goal is the master, and you are the servant. You tell yourself that the goal is the prize, and you are merely the lucky recipient. This dynamic creates a catastrophic, sophisticated sabotage. It destroys your ability to perform. Think of the athlete who reveres the championship so much that his hands shake when he holds the ball. Think of the suitor who believes their beloved is a flawless angel and therefore becomes unable to speak a coherent sentence in their presence. The pedestal creates a distance that capability cannot bridge. You cannot behave naturally when you are standing in the shadow of a giant. You become stiff. You second-guess your instincts. You try to force a perfect outcome to match the perfect image you built in your mind. The pressure becomes unbearable. Because the thing on the pedestal is flawless, you feel that your approach must also be flawless. You are not allowed to make mistakes. You are not allowed to be human. This is why needing it too much pushes having it away. The energy of the interaction shifts from collaboration to worship. The employer does not want a fan, they want a colleague. The romantic interest does not want a worshiper, they want a partner. Life demands equal footing. The danger of the pedestal is that it distorts your vision. You stop seeing the thing as it actually is. You see only the glint of the gold. You ignore the red flags or the hard work or the inevitable downsides that accompany any reality. You fall in love with the fantasy of the thing rather than the thing itself. This sets you up for a brutal collision with reality. If you ever do manage to reach the top of that marble column and grasp the prize, you will often find yourself disappointed. No reality can live up to the perfection of a statue. The job will have boring days. The partner will have bad habits. The wealth will bring new taxes. If you refuse to take the desire off the pedestal, the disappointment will cause you to discard it entirely. You will think you failed because the reality did not match the shine. But the failure was in the elevation. The solution requires a deliberate act of psychological demolition. You must smash the marble column. You must take the object of your desire and place it firmly on the ground right next to you. It must stand at eye level. It must be made of flesh and blood and wood and stone, not gold and light. When you bring the goal down to eye level, the intimidation vanishes. You are no longer looking up in awe. You are looking across in assessment. You can see the flaws and you can accept them. You can move freely.
Your humor returns. Your confidence returns. You realize that you are not lucky to have the opportunity, but that the opportunity is a match for your skills. Desperation is the act of reaching up for something you believe is out of your league. Competence is the act of reaching out for something that is sitting on your workbench. To escape the shadow of Midas, you must stop trying to turn your life into a golden fantasy. You must let it be real. You must let it be level. Only when you destroy the pedestal can you finally open the cage. Chapter 4: The Sabotage of Over-Trying. There is a cruel irony built into the architecture of human endeavor. It is a mechanism that often goes unnoticed until we are standing in the wreckage of our own making. We call this the law of reversed effort. It suggests that the harder we consciously try to do something, the less successful we become. This is the shadow of King Midas. It is not just about greed. It is about the rigid, frozen nature of an outcome that has been forced. Consider the act of falling asleep. It is the most natural biological function you possess. You do not need to learn how to do it. You do not need a degree to understand it. Yet if you lie in bed and command yourself to sleep, if you clench your eyes shut and demand unconsciousness with every ounce of your will, you will remain wide awake. The very effort to sleep signals to your brain that there is a task to be performed. It signals alertness. The harder you try to catch the horizon of sleep, the faster it retreats. This dynamic bleeds into every avenue of ambition. When we want something with a burning, desperate intensity, we stop acting and start forcing. We move from a state of flow into a state of friction. This is the sabotage of over-trying. It creates a peculiar frequency that repels the very thing we seek. Imagine a surgeon whose hands are trembling because he is too focused on the prestige of the surgery rather than the incision itself. His desire for a perfect outcome creates a tension in his muscles that makes perfection impossible. The obsession with the result destroys the process required to achieve it. In the realm of social dynamics and negotiation, this energy is even more palpable. We have all been in the presence of someone who needs our approval too much. They laugh too loud. They agree too quickly. They hover with an eager, frantic energy that makes us want to step back. We do not step back because we are cruel. We step back because human beings are wired to detect desperation. Desperation signals danger. It signals that the person before us is operating from a place of severe deficit. It triggers a primal instinct that says, resources are scarce here. When you approach a job interview, a romantic partner, or a high-stakes deal with the energy of over-trying, you are essentially telling the other party that you are incomplete without them. You are placing a heavy burden on the interaction. You are no longer an equal participant, offering value. You have become a beggar, demanding validation. This heaviness crushes the spontaneity and confidence required to actually win the prize. This is the Midas touch in its darkest form. By grasping the rose too tightly, you crush the petals. You turn the living, breathing dynamic of opportunity into cold, hard, lifeless gold. You wanted the object so badly that you destroyed its essence. The mechanics of this self-sabotage are rooted in anxiety. When the mind fixates on a specific outcome, it begins to simulate the pain of not getting it. This simulation triggers the stress response. Your heart rate elevates, your vision tunnels, your cognitive flexibility vanishes. You become rigid. In a complex world that requires adaptability and grace, rigidity is fatal. You become like a tennis player who stiffens his arm right before the swing. The ball goes into the net not because he lacked skill, but because he cared too much about the point and forgot the motion. We must understand that high performance and desperation are mutually exclusive states. High performance requires a certain level of detachment. It requires the archer to focus on the form of his stance and the tension of the string, while remaining indifferent to the target itself. If the archer's mind is screaming about the bullseye, his hand will shake. The pedestal we discussed earlier becomes a prison because it creates stakes that are too high to manage. When you elevate a goal to the status of a god, you lower yourself to the status of a slave. Slaves do not command reality. They beg for scraps. This is why the person who is willing to walk away often holds the most power. They are not over-trying. They are engaged, but they are not desperate. They are present, but they are not frantic. To escape the sabotage of over-trying, one must learn the art of loosening the grip. This is not the same as apathy. You still prepare, you still show up, you still work, but you remove the frantic emotional demand that the world must bend to your will right now. You accept that you can control your effort, but you cannot control the outcome. Paradoxically, when you stop needing the victory as a condition for your survival, you become dangerous. You become fluid. You stop signaling lack and start signaling competence. The noise in your head quiets down. You can finally sleep. You can finally speak without your voice cracking. You can finally hold the bird without crushing it. This is the only way to turn the Midas curse into a true golden touch. You must realize that the gold is not in the capturing, but in the capability. When you let go of the desperate need to have, you finally create the space to receive. Chapter 5. Possession versus appreciation. Consider the final and most devastating tragedy of the King Midas myth. It was not merely that he could not eat or drink. The true horror arrived when he reached out to comfort his daughter. In his desperation to hold her, he transformed her into a golden statue. At that moment, he achieved total possession. She was now a solid object of pure gold. She would never leave him. She would never change. She was his to keep forever. Yet in gaining this absolute possession, he lost the very essence of what he loved. The life was gone. The warmth was gone. He was left with a cold, heavy trophy that only resembled the thing he actually wanted. This is the shadow of possession. It is the distinct psychological difference between wanting to own an outcome and being able to appreciate an experience. When we act out of a desperate need to have, we inadvertently treat our goals and desires like objects to be captured and locked away. We want the relationship to be defined and static, so it cannot hurt us. We want the career achievement to be finalized, so we feel safe. We want the bank account to hit a specific number, so we can stop worrying. This is the mindset of the collector who captures a butterfly and pins it behind glass. You certainly own the butterfly. It is yours. But it can no longer fly. It can no longer surprise you. By possessing it fully, you have stripped it of the vitality that made it beautiful in the first place. When you approach your ambitions with the energy of possession, you are signaling a deep internal fear of loss. You are telling your own psychology that this external thing is the source of your stability. You believe that if you do not grip it tightly, it will escape. This creates a heaviness in your actions. You become monitoring and controlling. You analyze every text message. You obsess over every fluctuation in the market. You micromanage every detail of a project because you are terrified that the golden statue will turn back into flesh and blood and walk away from you. Contrast this with the energy of appreciation. Appreciation is the art of enjoying the sunset without trying to convince yourself that you own the sun. When you watch a sunset, you do not panic that it is going down. You do not try to freeze the sky. You do not try to put the horizon in your pocket. You simply stand there and let the experience wash over you. You are present. You are grateful. You are engaged. Because you are not trying to control the sun, you are able to receive its light fully. This is the state of mind required to actually attract and maintain high-quality circumstances. When you shift from possession to appreciation, you stop strangling your desires. You allow them room to breathe. In a career context, this looks like doing excellent work because you enjoy the craft and the challenge, rather than working frantically just to secure a title. The person who loves the craft usually rises faster than the person who is obsessed with the promotion. The person who loves the craft is relaxed and creative. The person obsessed with the promotion is rigid and political. One is appreciating the flow of work. The other is trying to possess a status. This dynamic is even more lethal in interpersonal dynamics. There is nothing more repelling than a person who is trying to possess you. It feels like a cage closing around you. It signals that they do not see you as a separate, autonomous human being, but rather as a prop in their play for safety. Conversely, there is nothing more magnetic than someone who appreciates you without needing to own you. This person feels like freedom. They enjoy your company, but they remain whole without it. They prefer you, but they do not require you to function. That creates a space where you want to stay, because you are not being forced to stay.
The Midas shadow convinces us that security comes from ownership. It tells us that if we can just turn everything into gold, we will finally be safe. But the reality of the material world is that everything is in flux. Everything is changing. Relationships change. Markets change. Health changes. Trying to possess these things is like trying to grab water with a clenched fist. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips through your fingers. To escape this shadow, you must practice the discipline of the open hand. You must learn to look at your goals and say, I would enjoy this immensely, but I do not need to freeze it in place to be okay. You must realize that the value of the flower is not in picking it and watching it wilt in a vase on your shelf. The value is in leaving it in the soil, where it is alive.
When you stop trying to turn your life into a collection of golden statues, you finally gain the ability to enjoy the garden. You move from the anxiety of the owner to the joy of the experiencer. And in that state of appreciation, you become capable of holding far more than you could ever grasp. Chapter 6. The Illusion of the Final Destination. There is a particular trick the mind plays on us when we desire something deeply. We convince ourselves that the object of our desire is a destination. We imagine a finish line. We construct a mental image where we cross that line and finally put down the heavy baggage we have been carrying for years. We believe that once we acquire the money or the relationship or the status, the story ends. We think the screen will fade to black and we will exist in a permanent state of relief.
This is the illusion of the final destination. It is perhaps the most dangerous deception in the psychology of ambition. It suggests that life is a waiting room and that living does not truly begin until the wish is granted. King Midas fell victim to this exact cognitive error. He did not just want gold. He wanted the absolute security and permanence he believed gold represented. He wanted a life where the struggle was finally over.
He wanted a final state of unchangeable perfection. But nature does not allow for final states. Nature is a process of constant flux and motion. By trying to freeze his world into solid precious metal, Midas tried to stop the flow of time itself. He wanted to arrive at a place where he never had to worry again. Instead, he created a reality where he could not survive.
This is the shadow of wanting it too much. When you view your goal as a final destination, you place an unbearable amount of weight on it. You turn a preference into a condition for survival. You tell yourself that you cannot be okay here because you are not there yet. This creates a psychological gap between where you are and where you want to be. That gap is filled with tension. It is filled with the pain of absence. When you live in that gap, you are constantly signaling to your nervous system that you are incomplete. You are signaling that you are lacking. This is the frequency of desperation. It is not a mystical force. It is a behavioral reality. When you are desperate, you become rigid. Your vision narrows. You lose your capacity for creativity and nuance because your brain is locked in a state of threat detection. Think about the physical mechanics of this. Imagine a surgeon who believes that a single, specific operation will determine the entire worth of his existence. If he believes that making a mistake means the end of his life, his hands will shake. His anxiety will override his skill. He wants it too much. The importance he places on the outcome sabotages the process required to achieve it. This is what happens when we idolize the destination. We become clumsy. We say the wrong things in interviews because we need the job too badly. We act unnatural on dates because we are trying to secure a partner rather than simply connecting with a human being. We squeeze the life out of the interaction because we are trying to force it to a conclusion. We must understand that the idea of arrival is a fallacy. There is no there to get to. Even if you achieve the massive success, or build the empire, or find the perfect partner, the next morning, the sun will still rise. You will still have to brush your teeth. You will still have to decide what to eat for breakfast. You will still carry your own internal weather with you. The external circumstances change, but the internal machinery of the human mind remains. If you are miserable and anxious while chasing the goal, you will likely be anxious and fearful when trying to keep it. The scenery changes, but the player remains the same. Midas thought the golden touch would solve the problem of human insecurity. He thought it was the answer. But the moment he got it, he realized that the answer was a death sentence because it did not account for the necessity of living. Life requires flow. It requires consumption and creation and movement. Gold is static. It is heavy and cold and dead. When we obsess over the final destination, we are worshiping a dead thing. We are worshiping a static image of success, rather than the dynamic process of living. To escape this trap, we must fundamentally alter how we view our goals. A goal is not a place to retire. It is a compass. It is simply a direction in which to walk. When you realize that the destination is just a navigational tool, the desperation evaporates. You no longer need to be there to be whole. You are whole right now, walking the path. This shift in perspective releases the chokehold you have on your desires. It allows you to operate with a light touch. You can work hard and strive for excellence, but you do so without the crushing weight of existential dread. You realize that a happy ending is just an arbitrary place where you stopped telling the story. Real life continues past the credits. When you stop treating the goal as a savior, you stop pushing it away with your frantic energy. You become like the skilled craftsman
who focuses on the wood in front of him, rather than the applause you might get when the chair is finished. The craftsman is calm. His hands are steady. He creates quality because he is present in the work, not lost in the illusion of the finish line. The Midas shadow warns us that if we try to solidify the future, we destroy the present. We must let go of the need for a final conclusion. We must accept that we are creatures of motion. We are not meant to arrive, we are meant to explore. When you embrace this, you can finally hold your desires without crushing them.
You can appreciate the gold without being entombed by it. Chapter 7. The Art of the Gentle Lean. We have arrived at the pivotal moment where philosophy meets practice. We have spent considerable time dissecting the pathology of the Midas touch. We have examined how the scent of starvation repels the very sustenance we crave, and how placing our desires on a pedestal only serves to push them out of reach. We understand now that the closed fist cannot receive. But this creates a difficult question for the ambitious mind. If clutching tight destroys the prize, and total apathy prevents us from even entering the game, what is the middle ground? How do we engage with the world, with our goals, and with other people, without crushing them under the weight of our own need? This balance is what we call the art of the gentle lean. Imagine for a moment you are standing beside a heavy stone pillar. If you throw your entire body weight against it, in an attempt to move it or to find support, you are no longer standing on your own feet. You have compromised your center of gravity. If that pillar were to suddenly vanish, you would fall face first into the dirt. That is the physical embodiment of desperation. It is a state of overcommitment, where your stability is entirely dependent on an external object. Now imagine standing apart from the pillar, refusing to touch it at all, because you are afraid of needing it. This is detachment, cold and sterile. There is no connection, no tactile feedback, and no relationship between you and the object. The gentle lean is the posture in between these extremes. You stand on your own 2 feet, your weight centered over your own arches. You extend a hand or a shoulder to make contact with the pillar. You lean just enough to feel its texture and its presence, but not enough to lose your footing if it were to disappear. You are engaged, but you are not entangled. This physical metaphor maps perfectly onto our psychological landscape. When we want something too much, we lean with our full weight. We tell ourselves that if we do not acquire this specific job, this specific partner, or this specific outcome, we will collapse. That internal narrative creates a heavy, suffocating energy. In social dynamics, people feel this physical weight. When you lean too hard on another person psychologically, they instinctively step back to avoid being toppled by your instability. The gentle lean changes the physics of the interaction. It suggests that you are interested, but you are also whole. It communicates that you desire the outcome, but you do not require it for your survival. This is the only state in which true appreciation is possible. King Midas could not appreciate the rose because his touch was an act of consumption. He needed to possess it, and in doing so, he solidified it into gold, killing its life force. To practice the gentle lean is to operate with intention, but without tension. Think of a skilled archer. The archer intends to hit the bullseye. There is focus, there is discipline, but there is no frantic desperation in the release of the string. If the archer's muscles are tense with the terror of missing, the arrow will fly wide. The shot must be released with a kind of casual confidence.
The archer leans into the shot,
but does not collapse into the outcome. This applies to every pursuit in the material world. When you are working toward a major career milestone, you must do the work with excellence. You prepare, you show up, but you must mentally lean gently against the result. You cannot strangle the process by constantly checking to see if you have arrived. You cannot suffocate the opportunity by radiating the fear of failure. The paradox of the human experience is that the things we chase often run from us, while the things we create space for are drawn to us. The gentle lean creates that space. It is an invitation rather than a demand. It signals to the world that you are a participant in the dance, not a predator hunting for a meal. Consider how you hold a handful of sand. If you squeeze your fist as tight as possible, The sand is forced out through the cracks between your fingers. You lose what you were trying so desperately to keep. But if you cup your hand gently, creating a secure but open vessel, the sand remains. This is the mechanics of reality. The harder you force a situation, the more friction you create. That friction slows you down and heats up the machinery of your life until it breaks. By adopting the posture of the gentle lean, you retain your power. You are saying that you prefer this outcome, but you are not a hostage to it. You are transforming your desire from a frantic need into a calm preference. This shift in weight distribution from external dependency back to internal stability is the antidote to the Midas shadow. It is how you touch the world without turning it into a cold, dead statue. You allow things to live, to breathe, and to come to you. You engage with the world lightly, and in return, the world allows you to hold it. Chapter 8. Walking away from the table. There is an axiom in the world of high-stakes negotiation that holds a terrifying amount of truth. The person who is most willing to walk away from the table is the one who controls the deal. This is not just a tactic for boardrooms or car dealerships. It is a fundamental law of human psychology and social dynamics. It is the ultimate cure for the Midas shadow. When we are desperate for an outcome, we become glued to the chair. We sit at the table of life, gripping the edge, sweating, staring intently at the object of our desire. We signal to everyone and everything around us that we cannot survive without this specific win. We need the job. We need the relationship. We need the recognition.
This intensity does not draw the prize closer. It creates a repulsive pressure. It makes the other party, whether it is a potential partner or a business opportunity, feel suffocated and undervalued. They realize they are not being appreciated for who they are. They are being consumed to fill a void within you. This is the Midas touch in its most tragic form. By refusing to let go, by refusing to lift your hands, you turn the living, breathing potential of the future into a cold, static statue of expectation. You freeze the dynamic because you are too afraid to let it move. Walking away from the table is the hardest action to take when you are starving. The scent of the meal is right there. Your survival instincts scream at you to grab it, to bargain for it, to beg for it.
But the paradox of the Midas shadow is that the grasping hand crushes the butterfly. To save the situation, you must be willing to leave it behind. This does not mean you give up on your goals or sink into apathy. It means you reclaim your center of gravity. When you stand up and turn your back on the table, you are making a profound declaration to your own psyche. You are saying that you are whole on your own. You are establishing that your well-being is not contingent on this external variable. You are breaking the circuit
of dependency. Consider the physics of social interaction. When you lean forward too far, you lose your balance. You become easily toppled. If the object of your desire moves even an inch, you fall on your face. This is the posture of the needy. But when you lean back, or when you stand up to leave,
You regain your footing. You become a solid entity again. You become a person of value because you have demonstrated that your time and your energy are your own. You are not a beggar hoping for scraps. You are a king or a queen inspecting an offering, and you reserve the right to decline it. This shift in energy is palpable. We have all felt it. Think of a salesperson who does not seem to care if you buy the product. They are helpful and informative, but they are perfectly content if you walk out the store. Suddenly, you trust them. You are intrigued. You wonder why they are so confident. Their lack of pressure creates a vacuum that draws you in. Now contrast this with the salesperson who blocks the exit, pleading with you to sign the contract. You want to escape immediately. The danger of wanting it too much is that you rob the situation of its natural oxygen. Walking away restores that air supply. It allows the other person or the opportunity the space to breathe and the space to miss you. It allows the dynamic to reset. Most people fear the walk away because they view it as a loss. They believe that if they leave the table, the game is over. They forget that the game is played inside the mind. By withdrawing your attention and your emotional investment, you often inadvertently reignite the interest of the other side. But even if you do not, even if the deal falls through or the relationship ends, you have won something far more valuable. You have won your self-respect. You have proven to yourself that you are not a slave to your desires.
You escape the golden cage by realizing the door was never locked.
You were just holding it shut with your own terrified grip. When you walk away, you break the spell of Midas. You stop trying to turn the world into gold to secure your safety. You realize you are safe already. You step out into the sunlight, empty-handed but free, and it is usually in that moment of total release that the things you truly wanted begin to follow you home. Chapter 9. The gold returns to flesh. There is a specific moment in the myth of King Midas that is often overlooked. We focus heavily on the tragedy of the story. We remember the horror of his daughter turning into a cold metal statue. We remember the bread hardening into bouillon in his mouth, and the wine turning to molten gold before it could quench his thirst. We focus on the starvation and the isolation, but we often forget the resolution. We forget the river. To break the curse, Midas was instructed to go to the river Pactolus and wash his hands. He had to physically rinse away the supernatural power he had begged for. As the story goes, the gold flowed off his skin and washed downstream where it settled into the sand. But look at his hands in that moment. They were just hands again. They were rough and human and vulnerable. They were flesh. This brings us to the final stage of our journey, which we call the gold returns to flesh. This is the resolution of our study on attachment. It is the moment you finally exhale. Throughout this exploration, we have discussed how placing a goal on a pedestal turns it into something cold and untouchable. When you want something with a desperate and starving energy, you freeze it in place. You turn a potential partner into an idol. You turn a career milestone into a monolith. You solidify the dynamic so firmly that nothing can move and nothing can breathe. You have unintentionally applied the Midas touch to your own dreams, effectively killing them by making them too precious to interact with. Now we must examine what happens when you finally stop trying to control the alchemy of your life. We look at what happens when you wash your hands in the river. The transition from desperation to normalization is physically palpable. Think about the sheer caloric energy required to sustain desperation. It is a constant, high-frequency broadcast of lack. It screams a message that says, "I do not have this, and I am terrified I never will."
By the laws of behavioral cause and effect, this behavior pushes away the very stability you seek. When you are frantic, you make unforced errors. You over-explain your position. You negotiate against yourself before the other side has even spoken. You are radioactive with need. The moment you wash your hands in the river, that frantic signal stops. You become silent. You become steady. And suddenly the world leans in to listen. This is not magic, and it is not mysticism. It is simple social and behavioral physics. When you withdraw the pressure of your massive expectation, the environment relaxes. Whether that environment is a negotiation room, or a social circle, or a creative marketplace, the dynamic is the same. Pressure creates resistance. The absence of pressure creates a vacuum that reality rushes to fill. When Midas lost the golden touch, he regained the ability to sustain himself. Imagine the sensation of touching a fruit and having it remain a fruit. It is soft and perishable and real. You can eat it and it nourishes you. Imagine looking at your ambition and seeing it as a project to be managed, rather than a judgment of your soul's worth. This is the gold returning to flesh. The object of your desire becomes attainable again, specifically because you have allowed it to be mundane. You have taken it out of the sealed glass case in the museum and placed it on the kitchen table. When you stop needing the outcome to save you, the outcome loses its power over you. It becomes just another part of the scenery of your life. This is the paradox that frustrates so many people.
We often see that the moment we truly give up on the need for a specific result is the moment the result arrives. It arrives because we have stopped blocking the door with our own anxiety. We have stopped strangling the opportunity with our fear of losing it. The return to flesh is a return to sanity. It is the realization that a living, breathing, imperfect reality is infinitely superior to a perfect, golden fantasy that you cannot touch. The fantasy is heavy. It is a burden that you have to carry around with you everywhere you go. It is a filter that turns every interaction into a transaction where you are constantly checking to see if you are getting closer to the prize. That is an exhausting way to live. When you let the gold wash away, you are left with your own life as it is. You are grounded in the present.
You are capable of genuine connection because you are no longer looking past the person in front of you to see what they can give you. You are no longer a hunter. You are a participant. The true tragedy of King Midas was not that he could not have gold. It was that he could not have life. His desire for a guarantee of wealth robbed him of the ability to engage with the world. By letting go of the need, you regain your senses. You regain your dignity. And often you gain the prize, not because you demanded it, but because you finally became the kind of person who could hold it without crushing it. The river is waiting. The water is cold and rushing and real. It is time to wash the gold from your hands. It is time to let the obsession flow downstream so that you can finally use your hands to build something real.
It is time to let the gold return to flesh. Chapter 10. Desire without deficit. Let us examine the engine that drives your ambition. Most of us are taught from a very young age that desire is a form of hunger. We are told that to truly achieve something great, we must starve for it. We are taught to visualize the goal with such intensity that it hurts to be without it. The cultural narrative suggests that the more painful the longing, the more deserving we are of the reward. We believe that agony is the currency with which we purchase success. But this is a fundamental misunderstanding of how the human mind interacts with the material world. It is the error of the deficit. The deficit is the belief that you are a partial equation waiting for an external variable to solve you.
You look at the prize, whether it is a specific person or a career milestone or a number in a bank account, and you say to yourself that you are not enough until you possess that thing. You convince yourself that your current state is broken and that the acquisition of the object is the only repair. This is not ambition. This is panic dressed in a suit. When you operate from deficit, you create a repelling force. Desperation is a heavy perfume, and it permeates everything you touch. Consider the dynamic of a desperate salesperson. You can sense the commission on their breath. Their smile is too wide, and their laugh is too loud, and their eye contact is too intense. You do not buy from them because their need for the sale outweighs their care for the reality of your situation.
You retreat because you feel that they are trying to take something from you to fill a hole in themselves. This is the shadow of King Midas. Before he even touched the gold, he was already broken. He viewed his life as insufficient. He viewed his power as lacking. The wish for the golden touch was a symptom of a deep internal poverty. He believed that if he could just accumulate enough external value, it would eventually seep into his skin and make him valuable too. But the deficit is a bottomless pit. You cannot fill a psychological void with physical matter. Desire without deficit is a completely different mechanism. It is the shift from requirement to preference. When you desire without deficit, you look at an objective and you appreciate it. You recognize its value. You decide that you would enjoy having it, but you do not attach your identity to the acquisition of it. You stand firmly in the reality that you are already complete and functional and worthy without the gold. The gold is simply a preference. It is a nice addition to a room that is already furnished. This shift changes your behavior in subtle but profound ways. When you do not need the outcome to survive, you become surgically precise. Your hands stop shaking. You stop overanalyzing every text message and every email and every market fluctuation. You stop forcing conversations. You stop suffocating the very thing you are trying to grow. Think of a master negotiator. The person with the most power in any room is the one who is most willing to walk away from the table.
If you need the deal to pay your rent or to prove to your father that you are successful, then you have no leverage. You are a hostage to your own need. But if you are there simply because the deal makes logical sense and you are perfectly content to leave without it, then you are dangerous. You are clear-headed. You can see the reality of the board because your vision is not clouded by the fear of loss. This is the paradox of high performance. You are most likely to get what you want when you no longer need it. This is not magic. It is not some mystical law of attraction where the universe rewards your detachment. It is simple behavioral psychology. When you are not desperate, you become safe to approach. High-value people and high-value opportunities are attracted to stability. They are repelled by neediness. If you chase a cat in the street, it will run from you because your energy is predatory. You are hunting it. But if you sit on the porch and read a book and ignore the cat, it will eventually curl up at your feet. It comes to you because you have created a space of safety
rather than a space of demand. You must learn to want things without demanding that they save you. You must cultivate a sense of self that is robust enough to endure the absence of the prize. When you remove the deficit, the gold stays gold. It remains beautiful and valuable. But because you are not gripping it with the crushing strength of a drowning man, you do not destroy it. You can hold it, you can appreciate it, and most importantly, you can put it down. This is the only way to escape the golden cage.
You must realize that the treasure is something you experience, not something you become. The emptiness you feel is not an absence of gold. It is an absence of self. Fill that first, and the rest will follow. The open hand. We close this narrative by revisiting the king who finally learned to eat again. The curse of Midas was never really about the gold itself. It was about the psychological inability to let things be what they are. When you stop trying to freeze moments into permanent possessions, they regain their natural warmth. The open hand is the ultimate symbol of confidence because it says you are stable enough to let things come and go without collapsing. When you unclench your fingers, you stop strangling the very results you desire. You allow opportunities to breathe. You allow people to choose you, rather than feeling forced by your anxiety. This is where true influence resides. It is not found in the crushing grip of control, but in the quiet strength of release. You move from a frantic need to acquire to a calm willingness to experience. By letting go of the demand for absolute certainty, you finally create the space for reality to enter. You are no longer the starving king in a golden cage. You are simply a person ready to receive whatever lands in your open palm.